And we keep things rolling here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, and we keep on rolling with awesome guests on this edition of the Sports Cubicle to break down all the noise, all the news, all the movement that's been going on at Halas Hall, that is going on with the charter franchise, that is going on with the now led Chicago Bears by Caleb Williams, is our best friend. You see him all over 000 Clocker Sports. You see him all over Heavy Sports, Soaring Down South, Last Word on Sports. He works for NASA. He knows how to make the best omelet ever, and he's going to be the first person to colonize Mars. He is our best friend. He is Josh Buckhalter. Josh, what's going on, buddy?
I tell you all the time, dude, you are the king of intros.
Stop it, my man. You are the best at bona fides at what you did, because if you are listening to this weekend on the Sports Cubicle, you better be following Josh, whether it's on Clocker Sports or it's at Josh G Buck. All those socials, will tag him at the end, because you were at Halas Hall over the last few days, and it has been crazy. We know the Bears are the stars of Hard Knocks. We finally got to hear from Ryan Poles and from Matt Eberflus now that the rookies have been signed, and that has been a big deal. What was your big takeaway finally being at Halas Hall as things are really ramping up for this new campaign, this new regime, this new kind of vibes at Soldier Field at Halas Hall? What was your takeaway going into it, heading into training camp?
Two things. First of all, that there was a new vibe and a new energy, a renewed energy, I'll say, because they were optimistic going into last year too, but that optimism has returned despite having an up and down year last year. As for Caleb, though, I think that my biggest takeaway from it was a lot of that noise was just that noise. They weren't necessarily as concerned about it. At least they weren't letting it on. And because of the fact they got it done with time to spare, and we know the cameras are going to be there, I would imagine that might have tied to it somewhat. I don't think they were as concerned at all. Remember, the rookies reported on the 16th, so they've been there, they've gotten their work in. They've been in contact with Caleb and his team. Both he and Ryan Poles declined to talk about the specifics and the outlandish requests that we heard about him making. It's business as usual for those guys.
What is with the story, the drama going around Caleb Williams? You and I have been in front of this for months at this point, before they officially had the number one pick, that there was always so much drama, always so much weird stories going around that never came from the mouth of Caleb Williams. And yet here we are again talking about no franchise tag, and he wants part ownership, and he'll only play on Thursdays, and if it's 67 degrees, he won't show up. It is always something, some weird rumor. And yet at the end of the day, all we've seen is him smile, come up with the bear claw, and have great chemistry with his teammates and people speaking highly of him. Just Eric Kramer on this edition of the Sports Cubicle was speaking glowingly about what he sees from this kid. Why is it that everything that we see in town, when we're talking, where people like you who are in the locker room, it's only good stuff, but for some reason outside, it is a lot of crazy noise?
Well, the outside narrative can be slow to catch up. A lot of times when you have a prospect as highly touted as Caleb is, as high profile as he is, the first real superstar of the NIL era, he came in with a reputation. And we've quickly learned that a lot of that reputation was unearned. And I mean that in the best way possible. You heard the whole blow up about Jalen Johnson talking about him being a diva, when really Jalen was saying things that he could not allow coming into the locker room. Come to find out, Caleb has been everything but a diva coming into the locker room, and has embraced the city and his teammates. So I think it's just, like I said, the national media is typically slow to catch up. And we know that in college, it's a lot of helicopter reporting where they're just kind of getting highlights of tidbits and then going off of that. And so this is his chance to kind of prove it. He's been doing it, but this is his chance to do it on a grander stage with Hard Knocks rolling in there.
I think it's interesting where a lot of people, and I think of like Mike Florio, who I actually really like. I respect, obviously. He's broken a lot of ground for people like us and Peter King and just some of the big names, right? And Colin Cowherd, when it comes to hot take artists, still a different form of media. There was always this noise around Caleb Williams. And what I never understood is what Caleb Williams is walking into. We know he has a relationship with Roman Dunze. He wasn't coming into a number one pick that lost and that only won one game. This is a team that won 7 games, that could have won more had Justin played. They went through those 4-game stretch with Bajan. We know the whole backstory about it leading into last year. I never understood the concept of Caleb Williams not wanting to be a Chicago Bear, other than the Bears have never had a great quarterback. We don't know if they actually could develop one. but it seems to me there's only X amount of teams in the NFL. And if you're ever going to make it anywhere in the NFL to break the bank and really hit a new kind of deal that this kid is looking for, it would be for a team like Chicago, right? Like I always found that a weird storyline that because it's the Bears, he didn't want to come here.
Yeah. I think a lot of that has to do, like you said, it is the Bears, and we know that their history has kind of been kind of what do you want to call it, snake bitten at that position. But at the same time, I think a lot of it has to do with Caleb's situation, and that by that I mean his representation. He doesn't have an agent per se. He's got a team of lawyers, his father. So there's not that relationship with those media outlets where we typically see those kind of glowing reports on guys, and this guy's doing this and he's been doing all of that. They don't have that kind of inroad with the league outlets, and so I think that's where a lot of the presumptions come from, because as you pointed out, he hasn't said a lot of the stuff that he's been accused of desiring, wanting, at least not to the public, or made that known. So it's more of that helicopter reporting stuff where you hear a snippet here or there, and because there's no agent who's actively working to control his narrative, you get these kind of stories.
And just to put a bow on it, right? Like, it was the Bears who had all the stuff that we're talking about. So did he really want to go home to Washington? Fair enough. But the Commanders are that much better of an option where you're going to land. And then obviously then New England, that's where you're going to end up, the place that, oh, we know it just creates quarterback. It just didn't have the greatest of all time doing it that you're still trying to replace. He was never going to do anything Arizona with Kyler Murray. The Chargers have a franchise quarterback. You're going to New York. Okay, good luck trying to go with the Giants all the way down to number 6 and work that type of tax bracket when this kid really wants to be a billionaire. So I always thought it was just weird narratives. But what were your thoughts hearing from the higher brass now that we've heard and we've signed deals and all the drama's over with? Did you hear anything that really interests you from the head coach, from the GM, that really piqued your interest heading into the next few weeks of the summer?
Yeah, and it's actually not on the offensive side of the ball. It was on defense, and a lot of the intrigue has been around the defensive end spot opposite of Montez Sweat. And Ryan Poles said today that they are not necessarily looking to add a veteran. They're actually looking to see what their young guys can do. I've been an advocate for having DeMarcus Walker, a guy who was brought in to be a starter, but also has the versatility to play inside. I would like to see him, maybe have that super sub kind of role. That would put more pressure on young guys like Austin Booker, rookie, who's kind of undersized. Dominique Robinson, who hasn't really shown, the potential that they believe he has in his years here. So it's an interesting situation, but he seems to have faith that they can muster enough pass rush to not have that defense fall off. They're riding high from last season, and they're very optimistic that they can keep it going into 2024.
Matt Eberflus is walking around with some swag, and I think he's earned it because the locker room loves him. You and a lot of different people who cover this team in the locker room, who are part of the beat, have been talking about all the stuff people like myself have been saying about him losing the team and being on the hot seat and getting fired. The players never felt that way. And you have always told me on these therapy sessions, Mike, he has not lost the locker room. They love him. They like him. They play for him. And it's all coming together. So I ask you this, right? We know come training camp, come a few weeks in the summer, there's going to be the second wave of cuts, the real players, the people that are actually going to play. In your gut, even though what we heard from Ryan Poles about it being internally, with the locker room kind of being around Matt Eberflus and believe in him. People talking about 9 wins, and if Caleb just does X, Y, and Z, they can achieve this goal with this defense. Will they go get a veteran that gets cut because of money reasons? Somebody that we don't foresee yet, that hits the market, that all of a sudden is a defensive tackle, defensive end that could be opposite of Montez Sweat, that could impact this team right now. In your gut, do you think that's a possibility that it will end up happening that way if there's a move to be made for the Chicago Bears?
100%. I don't think it behooves him at all to kind of overplay his hand now. You want to build confidence in those young guys, especially if you do want to see how they develop, and let them prove to you that you need to go out there and get that guy. And also, like you said, we don't know who's out there just yet. They might not be satisfied. He did address Yannick Ngakoue, said that they had been with him throughout his evaluation, but they have not been dealing with him in his rehab process. So, but he had a very glowing review on him. So I would look maybe for him to return if he is fully healthy later on in the offseason. That's another reason why you might want to wait, because you already have a guy in mind. So, but it doesn't make any sense to say now, yeah, we're going to go out there and find a veteran. That makes teams want to hold on to their guys. That might make your young guys, their confidence get down a little bit. So I think he handled it the right way, especially so early on in the season, or in the off season, the training camp program rather. Let's see what these guys can do and then make a decision from there.
He's one of the best in the business. He's one of our best friends. You could check him out all over the universe. He's covering the Chicago Bears like a blanket. He has had Hallis Hall. He's at Soldier Field. He's in the locker rooms, at the press conferences. He's at Clocker Sports, Triple Zeros, Soaring Down South. He does it all. I've literally seen the man split the atom. That is how impressive Josh
Can't
Buckhalter
tell
is.
anybody about that.
So, Josh, I want to ask you this, Josh, as we keep things rolling here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, with our awesome guest. We continue on with Josh Buckhalter for a few more minutes. Team USA, the NBA, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. The NBA in basketball is on fire. A team you cover, the Atlanta Hawks, is right in the middle of a lot of different moves, controversies, talking going on. Up here, another team you cover, the Chicago Bulls, making moves. Will Zach leave? DeMar is gone. What's happening with Vooch? Before we get to gold medal talk, what are your thoughts about the crazy offseason that has been in the NBA?
I think this is kind of par for the course at this point, and I think that the new CBA stricter rules have kind of only just exasperated the situation where now you kind of have to make those moves that you were wanting to do anyway. And a lot of it has been cutting some salary in creative ways, but like I said, it was just something that's been projected for a little while now.
Let's do two quick guesses before we get to Olympics. Is Nikola Vucevic a Chicago Bull by the end of this NBA season coming up?
Yes, I don't think he'll get moved until the offseason. I'm not sure that there'll be a team unless somebody gets really desperate for a guy who is a walking double-double, but does not really add much defensively. I think that's something that'll have to wait till next offseason.
Does Zach LaVine start the season as a Chicago Bull?
Yes, teams are going to at least want to see him play before they'll make any type of commitment. They've already been reluctant to do that when he was healthy.
Tell me about Team USA. I think the men and women have been impressed. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and the WNBA All-Stars versus the Team USA women's team is going to be awesome theater. It's going to be awesome basketball. And I think this new version of the Dream Team, not much other than they better come home. What are your thoughts about the international game, both on the men and women's side, that has you excited as we head to the Paris Olympic Games 2024?
I think the most exciting thing, and I'll start with the women's game first, because it's a striking storyline to hear how disappointed people were that Caitlin Clark was not a part. But then you think about that. Think about how good the team is that they felt that they did not need to bring, arguably, people were going to say the best player in the game, but if not the biggest draw for sure. That also points to how different the international game is than the league, than the domestic version. And so I'm excited to see them go over there and handle business like we expect the men to, just because, like I said, if you have a team that's good enough that you didn't feel like you need to bring Caitlin Clark along with you, blessings, because that's going to be dominant. And then for the men, like you said, bring it home, man. You guys have all the name power. You stole Joel Embiid from France. Like, you just bring it home. There's no excuses now. And if they don't win, I think this will go down as the biggest disappointment in probably USA basketball history.
Who's your favorite international player right now? Let's just say fun to watch, or maybe you think it's going to make things interesting. I mean, obviously with Serbia or with Canada or just any of these different teams. Are you with Joker? Are you with SGA? Are you with Luca? What international player, what international team really has your attention as somebody who, as we say, real hoopers know?
I would say Serbia, and it's Joker, but it's also because the Hawks, Bogdan Bogdanovic is also and he was voted the best player in Serbia over Joker. So like, I just want to see how that dynamic plays out. Oh man, I got to be honest, man. I'm very Olympic minded when it comes to this. Like, I'm very Homer, like USA. I'm not rooting for anybody else but red, white, and blue when it comes to the Olympics, man.
yeah, 100%. I would love to just see Canada versus the United States for the gold medal. That is the matchup.
That's an NBA game there.
It's 100%. And I tried to explain to people, I'm like, this Olympics is just going to be a third tournament if you're into it. I mean, we're going to have the Olympic Games, the in-season tournaments, and the NBA playoffs. Josh, this has been absolutely amazing. Before we let you go, what are all the social medias that you are actually posting and interactive with? We want to make sure heading into training camp, heading into the NFL season, and then the NBA season, that people are getting all the awesome content, the hard work that you're doing. Where exactly can everybody find you, and that you're actually active every single time you get a cool interview, scoop, or press conference note?
Two places, Clocker Sports and at Josh G Buck on X. And if they're not there, you can check those on YouTube, especially Clocker Sports. Clocker Sports is on YouTube. It's on Instagram. It's on Facebook as well. So if the note's not there, check on X for Josh G Buck, and you will have it, man.
He will be in your ballots in November. Just make sure you check off his name to make sure this man takes office in January of 2025. He is our best friend. He is covering everything like a blanket. Follow him all over the universe. You heard the man. He is Josh Buckhalter. Josh, thank you so much for joining us, my friend.
A pleasure, man. Anytime.
We got more coming up next here on this edition of the Sports Cubicle. I'm Mike Mercado.